The floor, representative of Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Before coming to the substance of our statement today, I think we need to make an institutional clarification. We note with concern that an attempt is being made to present to the Security Council a supposed representative of civil society, a person whose public career trajectory bears the hallmarks of sustained funding from foreign governments and transnational corporations. This has been the case for years, as well as participation in processes of political destabilization and the promotion of institutional breakdown in her own country. The instrumental use of this person to legitimize narratives of confrontation, justify the use of force, or minimize violations of international law does not contribute in any way to the purposes of this Council or to the strengthening of multilateralism. On the contrary, it erodes the credibility of the debates and distorts the Security Council's mandate entrusted with the maintenance of international peace and security. Mr. President, on January 3rd, 2026 is a date of profound historical significance, not only for Venezuela, but for the international system as a whole. On that day, the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela was the target of an illegitimate armed attack lacking any legal justification by the government of the United States of America, which included bombing of our territory, the loss of civilian and military lives, the destruction of civilian infrastructure, essential infrastructure, and the kidnapping of the constitutional president of the Republic, Nicolas Maduro Moras, and the First Lady Cilia Flores. Venezuela comes before this Council today with a deep conviction that international peace can only be sustained if international law is respected without exception, without double standards, and without selective interpretations. The events of January 3rd constitute a flagrant violation of the UN Charter perpetrated by the US government, in particular the violation of the principle of sovereign equality of states, of the absolute prohibition of the use or threat of use of force against the territorial integrity or political independence of any state, as enshrined in Article 2, Paragraph 4. And a violation of the duty to settle disputes by peaceful means. Similarly, these acts also seriously violate the Geneva Conventions and its protocols, as indiscriminate attacks were carried out against the civilian population and assets. International human rights law has also been violated, particularly the right to life, personal integrity, and security. Of particular seriousness is the kidnapping of the President of the Republic by the government of the United States of America, which constitutes a direct violation of an essential norm of the international legal order, namely the personal immunity of heads of state in office. This immunity is not an individual privilege. It is an institutional guarantee that protects the sovereignty of states and the stability of the international system. Its disregard not only affects Venezuela, but also sets an extremely dangerous precedent for all states represented in this chamber, regardless of their size, power, or alliances. Mr. President, General Assembly Resolution 3314 clearly defines as an act of aggression the bombing of the territory of one state by the armed forces of another state, as well as the invasion or occupation, even without formal annexation. The events we are denouncing here unequivocally fit this definition. In 2004, the International Court of Justice affirmed that occupation exists when a state exercises effective control, even without formal annexation or the continuous presence of troops. Security Council Resolution 242, for its part, emphasizes that the acquisition of territory by force is inadmissible, while General Assembly Resolution 2625 establishes that the territory of a state shall not be subject to military occupation as a result of the use of force in contravention of the UN Charter. Allowing such acts to go without an effective answer would amount to normalizing the replacement of law by might, while eroding the very foundations of the collective security system. Today, it is not only Venezuela's sovereignty that is at stake, the credibility of international law, the authority of this organization, and the validity of the principle that no state can set itself up as a judge, party, and executor of the world order are also at stake. Mr. President, we cannot ignore a central element of this US aggression. Venezuela is the victim of these attacks because of its natural resources. Our country's oil, energy, strategic resources, and geopolitical position have historically been factors of greed and external pressure. When force is used to control resources, impose governments, or redesign states, we are faced with a logic that harks back to the worst practices of colonialism and neocolonialism. Accepting such a logic would mean to open the door to a deeply unstable world in which countries with greater military capacities can decide by force the political and economic destinies of other states. This scenario not only threatens Venezuela, it threatens international peace and security as a whole. If the kidnapping of a head of state, the bombing of a sovereign country, and the open threat of further armed action are tolerated or downplayed, the message sent to the world is a devastating one, namely that the law is optional and that force is the true arbiter of international relations. Venezuela firmly believes in diplomacy, dialogue, and peaceful coexistence among nations. That has always been our historical position, and it remains so today, even in the face of an aggression of this magnitude. It is precisely that commitment to peace, the one that was violated on the 3rd of January. Therefore, Venezuela urges this Security Council to fully assume its responsibility and to act in accordance with the mandate conferred upon it by the Charter of the United Nations. In that regard, we request, A, that the government of the United States of America be demanded to fully respect the immunities of President Nicolas Maduro and First Lady Celia Flores, as well as their immediate release and safe return to Venezuela. 2, that the use of force against the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela be clearly and unequivocally condemned. Thirdly, that the principle of non-acquisition of territory or resources by force be reaffirmed. And 4, that measures aimed at de-escalation, the protection of the civilian population, and the restoration of international law be adopted. Mr. President, in spite of the seriousness of the events, Venezuela would like to inform this body and the international community that its institutions are functioning normally, that constitutional order has been preserved, and that the state exercises effective control over all of its territory. In accordance with our Constitution, Executive Vice President Delcy Rodriguez is being sworn in as acting President of the Republic, thereby guaranteeing institutional continuity, stability, and internal peace. We wish to convey a message of serenity, confidence, and hope to the Venezuelan people. Venezuela is a nation that believes in peace, work, and dignity. Our commitment is to diplomacy and law, and the law is firm and unwavering. We defend our sovereignty without renouncing our values. We bet on dialogue without accepting imposition. We believe in a future of coexistence, development, and mutual respect among nations. We trust that this Security Council will rise to the historic moment facing humanity and choose the path of legality, collective responsibility, and peace. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
I thank the representative